in our lives, we all have pain, and we all have.
God bless everyone. I am going to tackle the introduction of our task. So, as I've read both of the given topics, the difference between John Schumacher and Gregorio Zaide, Sonia Zaide, is that within the works of Mr. John, it has tackled the developments of 19th century such as economic development, political development, cultural development, religious development, and last but not the least, the main currents of nationalist movements. It did mention about the hardship of Filipinos during Spanish times, but not as detailed compared to what has Zionist written regarding to the Filipinos suffering from 19th century. Even naman because it did focus on the developments along with the nationalism. And example is that how Philippines got educational system thanks to the GSETs and the propaganda movements, La Solidaridad, and more. How the Filipinos slowly revolts with the time of Spanish colony. Also, what I've liked to what has Mr. John written is that it has lot of good sources. You know what naman is yung mga sinasabi ni Rizal, or I should say na yung mga exchange letters niya with his brother Pasiano Rizal and his Austrian friend Ferdinand Blumentritt. Not gonna like putting it on the book made it more credible. So now, let's go on to the next topic.
After reading the documents of John Schumacher, it tells that the origins and developments of Filipino nationalism cannot be understood simply by studying Rizal and his nationalist thought, neither can it be understood without giving him central attention. Economic development, Philippine exports in this burgeoning economy where agricultural products and rapidly growing population needed increased amounts of rice. And also we have the political development. It says that there is no progress in political because of the corruption of government. Was its inability to provide the basic needs of public works, schools, peace, and others. The cultural development also tackles about the major influence on the educational developments of 19th century was return of Jesuits. It speaks about the educational institution for the Spanish-speaking teachers for projected new primary system.
John Schumacher, Rizal in the context of 19th century. Through the origin and development of Filipino nationalism cannot be understood simply by studying Rizal and his nationalist truth. Neither can it be understood without giving him central attention. But like any seminal thinker, Rizal involving nationalist truth must be studied within the context of his times. The purpose of this is to single out some major economics, political, cultural, and religious developments of 19th century that influenced Rizal's growth as a nationalist and condition that evolution of his thoughts. Without an understanding of his milieu, one can scarcely understood Rizal's enduring importance. Importance to the Filipino people now, the relevance of his ideas and ideas today. One of the ironies of the cult reader to Rizal as a national hero is the often his word rather than his thoughts have been involved without any consideration of the historical context in which they were spoken of the issue in the other.
Proceeding to the Zaide's work, it did focus on the hardship, deprivation, and even experiencing bereavement of our Filipino ancestors because of the poor governance of the Spaniards in the old days of the 19th century. Noticeably, it was addressed in the Zaide's work how did the late Filipinos suffer from the instability of colonial administration, corrupt officialdom, no Philippine representation in the Spanish Cortes, human rights being denied to Filipinos, no equality before the law, maladministration of justice, racial discrimination, philocracy, forced labor, haciendas owned by the friars, and the tyranny of Guardia Civil. And all of that was the wicked doings of the Spaniards during the regime here in the Philippines. And I do so believe that that is an understatement. Perhaps there were some impurities they've done that wasn't able to be written down by some historians. Okay, so if we compare the works of the Zaides to John Schumacher, I believe that the Zaides' works was far more entertaining than the work of Schumacher. It was that just reading it was less time-consuming, and the tyranny of Spaniards was far more discussed properly, such as how the political instability of Spain affected the Philippines, that which brought chaos. Also, how corruption started to worsen. It was stated that it wasn't so bad, but the successors of the 19th century were full of incompetent and greedy Spaniards. Also, including how unfair and biased the Spaniards. They enjoyed the freedom of speech, freedom of association, but never let the Filipinos wallow the same. Also, friars being recognized as the legal owners of the lands that have been cultivated by the Filipinos was quite an unreasonable act of Spaniards, and it even turned out that the Filipinos became the tenants. And even taking a lawsuit would take years to be processed because there were prejudices among the Filipinos. And speaking of prejudices, Filipinos have suffered greatly because of that word. Our lineage became a laughingstock because of our skin color, especially with our flat nose. Spaniards even coined that Filipinos are Indios, which means Indian. However, in retaliation, Filipinos dubbed them as bangus, which means milkfish, because of their pale complexion. And to sum it all up, the late Spaniards are quite the bastards. And regarding the works of Schumacher and the Zaides, both are great. They were able to enlighten us with the past.
In addition, the Filipino people in the 19th century during the times of Rizal by Gregorio and Sonia Zaide were suffered from mismanagement of Spanish government. They were victims of progressively worse colonial power. The instability of Spanish politics leads to chaos for the reason of the unstable sovereignty of Spain that negatively affect the political and economic development of the Philippines because there were frequently changed colonial officials in less than a year and these colonial officials initiated graft and corruptions that brought tortures to the Filipino people. Filipinos are obliged to work and be employed against their will with the threat of extreme hardship and violence. Forced labor leads Filipinos to discrimination and causes so much suffering in such a way that they were sometimes compelled to work far from their homes. The government of friars who ruled the Philippines for their spiritual functions that people believe and feared and become more powerful abusive for the friars become majority landowners due to foreclosure properties and land grabbing. The Guardia Civil's purpose is to maintain the internal peace and order in the Philippines but turns out inhuman by maltreating innocent people and raping helpless women. All these anomalies and immoral actions of Spanish colonials leads Dr. Jose Rizal and other youthful patriots to launch propaganda movement that paved the way for Philippine Revolution to resist colonialism and to end heavy struggles and conflicts of all Filipinos.
Lean on me when you're not strong.